So I think we're live. Yes, let go, Mom. Is it ticking down?
Yes.
We have our mom running the AV, which is a little scary. So we're back and we're live, and we're here with Dave Seaman Sr., our dad.
Otherwise known as Dear Old.
Dear old dad, D.O. So, you know the drill. Let's take us through the early part of your life and what you remember earliest and what you remember, maybe some first memories and names and dates and some specifics along those lines.
All right, the early years, just in some background, the Seaman family, we have an extensive family tree that goes way back. And my father ended up, and the whole family, when they arrived in America, they were basically all Quakers. And their religion was Quaker, and as a result, the male generations going back 2 or 3 generations all went to Swarthmore College, which has a Quaker affiliation. My father graduated.
That's in Albany, or what?
Swarthmore was outside of Pennsylvania, on the outskirts of Philadelphia. It's a small liberal arts school, but it's basically a Quaker school. My father was a graduate of Swarthmore in 27, and he majored in engineering, and his whole life was devoted to engineering in the early years with large companies, and he ended up in consulting engineering when we moved to Connecticut many years later.
So he lived outside of Pittsburgh, and then you moved to Connecticut?
He, when he graduated from Swarthmore, and all during the Depression, he was with, most of those years, with American Bridge Company. He was a private engineer, and they had projects throughout the country. Now, on September 3rd, 38, when I was born, we happened to be living in Staten Island. His work involved the New York City area. He lived in Staten Island, and that's where I was born. Shortly thereafter, and in those war years, he traveled around the country a little bit for special projects for American Bridge Company, West Virginia. Then we ended up back in Pittsburgh, which is where my mother was. Pittsburgh area was where she was from and had been brought up. So in the early 40s, we lived in Pittsburgh. My early memories, as I indicated before, my father's family was strictly Quaker. My mother was an Irish Catholic, half Irish, half English, but very much Catholic. I was baptized and became a Catholic early on. My early memories in Pittsburgh, first school was St. Philomena's. I went to kindergarten, St. Philomena's, went to first grade at the public school. I believe it was called Sheridan Grammar School. And at that point, my father decided to make a career change and looked for consulting engineering. Ended up with a firm in Bridgeport, Connecticut. And they did a certain search, and they located this job, and we moved to Connecticut in the early 40s during the war.
So you were like 6 or something like that?
Well, we moved to Connecticut maybe in 43. I was about 5 years old. Actually, I was 6 years old, and in that public school in Pittsburgh, that was 44. So it was that year that I then moved. And it was one of my first memories was VJ Day, which was 1945. We lived in a small apartment in Bridgeport. He was with this consulting engineering firm in Bridgeport.
Was that the house that you took us to that one day, like a year ago? We knocked on the house by that pizza place, right? Off of Main Street. Do you remember that?
That was a little later. The first VJ Day, we were in a 3rd floor apartment, a 3-room apartment over near the Brooklawn Country Club. A couple of years later, we bought a home at 95 Overland Avenue, where we stopped that one day.
Right.
That was in the north end of Bridgeport. We were there until the late 40s, when at that point he had transferred to a consulting engineering firm in New Haven. And he was commuting to New Haven, so they located a new construction and they built a home in Hamden on Carmalt Road, a little ranch house that we moved there at 49. So that was the basic, history of our moves. We ended up in the...
I'm sorry, you said that's the Mount Carmel house?
No, it's Carmalt Road. It's in Spring Glen section of Hamden. Now, I was, as I had indicated, my mother was a very staunch Catholic. So that, but I had gone, in those early years, I went to Spring Glen School, which is a public school. When we reached high school age, everybody, all my buddies were going to Hamden High School, but my mother was very much interested in me going to Notre Dame High School, which is in West Haven, Connecticut. So that's...
Did your dad, all these years, did he travel often, or was he around most of the time?
Mostly this job in Connecticut didn't involve any more travel. All the traveling in his career was from graduation in 27 through the early 40s.
Okay.
Once we landed the job, or he landed the job in Connecticut, these were local-sized firms, firms of maybe 15 people or so, consulting engineers. They advised on smaller construction kind of projects, mostly all local, either the Bridgeport area or the New Haven area.
So we started to get into the Notre Dame piece. You want to continue your...
Yeah, Notre Dame High School, 4 years. I commuted from Hamden, took the bus, and ended up in West Haven every day. And Notre Dame High School, Catholic school, and all my buddies were from Notre Dame High School. Notre Dame man is a gentleman, as they said, but they were from all over the extended area, not just the West Haven area, but all of...
I don't know, is Notre Dame's Catholic, or is it just, I mean...
Notre Dame is definitely a Catholic school.
So did you have priests or
We had
Jesuits or
There
brothers?
were brothers of Holy Cross who did all the teaching.
Okay.
Really, the only priest would have been maybe the chaplain for the school. These were brothers, and then they did have some lay people. As a matter of fact, our old friend Jim McKeown was a teacher at Notre Dame High School, and he was also an assistant coach for a couple of the athletic teams. So Notre Dame was 4 years. It was a pretty good run for me. I would, generally speaking, I would say I'm above average IQ-wise, so I never had too much problem with school, other than maybe a lack of motivation. I wasn't really turned on and grinding out the studying, but I was always in the top 15 or 20% of my class, both in the high school and going on to college.
Okay.
Do you have any memories of things you did with your parents? Like Mom had mentioned, they would go to Uncle Ted's.
Or trips, or like other...
Relatives.
Well,
Did heirs have brothers or sisters?
I was an only child, and my father heirs had one brother who lived in Staten Island. We would visit them. My grandparents, my grandfather died, I think, the year I was born. But his wife lived into the 50s, and we would go visit her. She lived in Brooklyn all those years, and our little family trips, there was, I can't think of anything specific, but the three of us would go places together and do things. And,
okay. Well, we know that you have a rich history of golf, which we're going to talk about in the next segment, because I think we're close to wrapping this up. So remind me to pursue that topic, because I know
And jobs.
Dear old is a big-time golfer and a fan of the sport. So thank you very much. If you could just shut that off, Mom. Thank you.